This gear review is for the Dangerous Music BAX EQ. You can see this right here. First off, this EQ is built extremely well. I think there's another version out now where it has like black knobs, but I have this older knobs and this older version that has like these silver knobs, and you can kind of hear it. Like it's a really kind of satisfying click whenever you are changing any of the selections. And this is detented, obviously you can hear it here, but it just feels, I think out of all the gear that I have, this is the most satisfying in terms of like moving the knobs. And this is the in out button, and it's constructed really well. The reason why I got the BAX EQ was I was looking at all of the mastering, like the mastering studios and what they were using, and for me, Sterling Sound, they're just kind of producing the best music that's out there, just like the best sounding. And Joe Laporta is one of the mastering engineers, and I saw him use this. And then I also actually watched like a YouTube video of Greg Calby talking about the BAX EQ and how good the low end was. And I think the Sterling Sound mastering engineers were a pretty big part as to why I got the BAX EQ. They say the BAX is pretty similar to like those old school radio controls where it's just bass and treble, and you basically have that here. You have like boosting or cutting the low end on this section, the low frequency, and then the high frequency, it's like bass, and then it's treble here. So when I first got this EQ, I mean, you're looking at half dB increments right here, and it goes to +5, -5. And this was one of the first EQs I got, which I think is kind of interesting about, having a BAX EQ as a first EQ. I think a lot of people get other types of EQ, but when I was, shopping for analog gear, I wanted to work backwards. So I wanted to see like what would you use in a mastering studio, and then kind of, work backwards from there. So I chose this first, and I don't know, there's pros and cons as to picking this as a first EQ unit. They talk a lot about phase shift with different EQs. There's some EQs that are much better for phase shift, and this was one of them that was supposed to be really good. I think the MAG EQ4 is also one that's really good with phase shift that I'd heard a lot about. And for me, it was between the MAG EQ4 or this one, and I ended up going with this one. But basically, like, I mean, you could be boosting at like 3 dB, and it just sounds so natural. Even the low end is fantastic on the BAX EQ. I understand what Greg Calby is saying with just adding a low shelf at like 74 or 98, or even some of the higher points like 116. I mean, it's just really good for adding that shelving clean like low end for it. And even with like the shelf, I feel like I'm typically adding like just a little, like maybe like 1 dB of like a shelf at 1.6 or 2.1. Like it just really helps kind of clear up some of the mud and add some clarity back into it. And so I'm finding the shelves like really amazing. What's incredible about this is that you literally can put this on any kind of source material, like any kind of genre or song, and it just sounds incredible, just because like the way that it maintains the phasing of like, boosting a whole mix or boosting a subgroup like drums or something. Like it just does such a good job at making it clean and still beautiful, and not phasey and kind of messed up. The cut for the high frequency and the low frequency, I like those a lot too. They're really gentle sounding. They're good curves for the cuts, and overall, like, I think it took me like some time to really understand it, maybe because this was the first EQ unit I've had. But when you put this on, you know, I feel like I'm kind of sticking around like +2, +3. +3 is kind of aggressive, but depending on how you're using the BAX EQ, like I've been really enjoying it lately on drums and using like the low shelf, high shelf on the drum bus. And you just have to be careful and use it to taste and make sure you're not overdoing it. But even when you do overdo it and boost too much, like it's still a lot more beautiful than other EQs that you might be pushing really aggressively. So I feel like with the backs, you really, my honest review is you really can't go wrong with this with this EQ, especially if you just want to add a little bit of touch on the low end, a little bit on the high end. You know, and also you have these you know, these cut sections of like that's 70 kilohertz and 28, you know, and then it goes down here from like 12, 18, 24. Like it's just a really good way to just clean up your clean up the low end, clean up the high end, and really kind of, you know, you're able to just boost a little bit more. And so the BAX EQ, very wonderful, very beautiful sounding EQ. Highly recommend it.